Good morning, good people. Today is Thursday, November the 6th, if I'm not mistaken, 2025. So, I wake up this morning to the news, and they're stating that the President of the United States is once again changing his tune, in which this guy, he flip-flops and flickers like a turn signal. Earlier this week, he stated that he was not going to fund the SNAP program after stating prior to that he would fund the SNAP program. And so this morning, I watched on the news, and I just watched it for a short period of time. I didn't even listen to it thoroughly, but I just overheard him saying that they need to reopen the government, in which they, meaning the Senate, he was speaking with the Senate at the time, in which majority of the people know that the Senate is pretty much Republican. It's run by the Republicans. That's why the Republicans have so much power right now in this country. But yeah, I guess he met with them on yesterday at some point in time, and they had a conversation about reopening the government. And I heard him say, and like I said, I just partially watched and listened to it, and I overheard him say that they need to reopen the government because if there's any legislature or laws that need to be passed, they won't be able to pass them because of the situation that the government is in right now. And so I say that he flip-flops and changes his tune so much because when he made that statement about not funding the SNAP program, he said along with that the Democrats needed to reopen the government, that the Democrats needed to back down from their position in reference to the government continuing to fund Obamacare in order for the government to be reopened. And which I made a video yesterday, and I'm going to post it at some point in time. And I was talking about the fact that with this election that just happened as of yesterday, we saw in this country another turning of the tide, to where a lot of Democrats were voted into pretty high positions within each state. And these states are important to the Republicans in order for them to maintain the control that they so-called have right now over this country. And so, of course, if we saw it, Donald J. Trump was watching these elections like a hawk in the sky. And once again, with the changing of the tide came a changing of Donald Trump's mind. Because he realized now at this point, with the Democrats seeming to be coming back into power, that he has to make himself look good. He has to make himself look like he truly gives a darn about this country and about the people of this country. In which, if y'all watch any of my previous videos, and I think it was the one yesterday, where I kept saying that this guy does not care about anyone else but himself. Point blank, period. If a car was coming and his wife or one of his children were standing in front of that car, and he had the opportunity to jump in front of the car and get hit instead of them, more than likely he would stand there and watch them get run over, because it's all about him. And this is another moment in time that proves exactly what I'm saying. Because all the way up until this point, it was the Democrats' fault. It's the Democrats' fault. I'm not going to reopen the government, in which it's obvious that he thought that way, because this is the longest shutdown of the government in the United States ever. And wouldn't you know, it beat out the second longest shutdown, which was under his watch when he was the president the first time. And I'm not going to get into the ignorance of the people in this country for voting this guy into the White House. I'm not going to get into it, because this guy showed over and over again the first time that he was in the White House that he was not capable of running this country like it should be ran. But when I say that it's all about him, he goes to the Senate and made a plea with them, basically, stating that they need to open the government. And why? Because if they open the government now, he still may have some form of leverage in order to continue to promote himself as being this all-wise great leader, in which I personally know that is not the reality. I know bad people when I see them. I know lies when I hear them. I know con artists. And he's all of these things. And once again, because of the loss of Republican control in this country, and it's slowly happening, y'all, he has to figure out a way in order to make himself in the Republican Party look as if they are still the superior group. And how do you do that? You go and reopen the government right after the elections happen. And by reopening the government, people can once again go back to work and feel comfortable knowing that they're going to make a paycheck. People will be able to receive their SNAP benefits. And if they come to their senses, they will continue to fund the Obamacare Act, because that is also a necessity for the people in this country. But once again, y'all, this guy has taken this country and the people of this country through so much, and we've gone through so much turmoil because of the selfishness of this guy. I mean, we all have that trait of being selfish. But when you're being selfish and it affects billions of people, that's selfishness on a whole nother level. That's downright criminal, if you ask me, to do the things that you've done and to take the people through what you've taken these people through. It is getting so bad that it's getting to the point where the NSTA, whatever it is, the people that's over the airspace when it comes to the airplanes and all that good stuff, to where they are saying that if this shutdown continues, they're going to have to shut down certain airspaces. That thousands of flights are going to be canceled because They do not have the man and woman power in order for these airports to run efficiently. People are beginning to call out more and more with sudden illnesses, in which I completely understand they should have been ill after that first week of not receiving a paycheck, to be truthful with you. Because it's unfair to them, it's unfair to their families for them to have to go into somebody's workplace and not receive a pay for doing so. And if the people who are taking these flights have anything negative to say about the TSA agents, the people that are up in the control towers, anybody that's paid by the government that are deciding to not go to work, if the people that are flying have anything negative to say about them, that goes to show how ignorant people can be. And I hope that they don't have anything negative to say about these people. I hope they realize it's their government that's causing their flights to be delayed and or canceled. You're talking about people that had their flights delayed days at a time because of everything that's going on. And it's going to get to the point, if they don't open up the government, that people's flights are going to be canceled altogether, so people won't be able to fly at all. And if they do get a flight, it's going to take weeks for these people to get a flight that would normally take a couple of hours for this to happen. And why? Because of the evil, selfish, self-centered people that the American people decided to put in the office. The vice president and anyone from the president down are all evil and self-centered. They have the nerve to talk the way that they talk and say the things that they say. They got some guy that was a news anchor running the over the military, y'all. I mean, let's make sense of people who are even put in these certain positions. Why are they there? Because they know, because the so-called president knows that if he tells them something to do, they're going to do it without any hesitation. So you have to remove the people that are going to defy your lies and your ignorance to situations in order to have power. So you put these yes boys into these high positions in order for you to maintain control. Because anyone with experience would have told this guy, hey man, you shouldn't be doing this. Hey, you shouldn't do this. And that's what he doesn't like. But at the same time, that's what we need. That's what he needs. He needs someone that's going to tell him, hey, stop. Let's think about this before you make this decision. Because this decision is going to affect and cause X, Y, and Z to happen. He has these stupid people under him that doesn't care what happens when a decision is made from that White House. And so that's why we literally see the crumbling of the White House and the statues that this country was built upon. And when I say literally, even though I know that they took bulldozers or whatever type of construction vehicles into that place to demolish parts of the White House. But at the same time, we still see that the White House is crumbling. And this is a literal statement. It is literally crumbling right before our eyes. It's being torn down. And so, once again, like the Bible says, we know a man by his fruits. If it's good fruits, we know that that's a good person. If it's bad fruits, we know that's a bad person. And we can see his fruits. We can see what his objectives are. Like I said, even though I know that he made the call to go in there and tear down that part of the White House, but he's showing us that he's tearing down the government. He's tearing down what this country had been able to grow into. Because we know where this country started at and what many people had to go through in order for us to be where we had gotten. But he's gone in. He went in, got rid of DEI, affirmative action, claiming that the minorities, which were and are black and brown men and women, and also white women who were put into positions, and they stated that they were only put into these positions because of that program. No, that program helped allow them to get those positions. They actually got those positions because they qualified for those jobs, and they out-qualified the people that were in competition with them. That's how they got those jobs. It had nothing to do with, oh, just because you're black, we're going to give you this position. That's stupid. Me being a black man know that that's a stupid concept. I would not want somebody black in a position just because of their color, and they had no earthly idea of what to do and how to do it. In which we have a so-called president in the White House who is in a position and he knows nothing about what and how to control that position, to do that job. But yet you had people running around here saying, oh, well, because of DEI, they're now discriminating against the white man. Now the white man can't get the good job because of affirmative action and DEI. How stupid as a country can we be, or can people be, to think that because of that program or that policy, that white people, or white men specifically, were losing out on jobs? And I have nothing to say negatively about the assassination of that Kirk guy. But that's how he thought. He thought that the white men were being discriminated against and that black people were being put in position of powers just because of their color. Or white women were being put into positions of power because they were white women and not because they deserved those jobs. But I say all of that because the tearing down of the White House started with the tearing down of these policies, the removal of these policies, the defunding of all of these different programs. That's where the tearing down started, and now we can see it literally happening before our eyes. So we have to be factual, y'all. We have to use truth and reasoning when coming up with the idea. And we also have to do the same when coming up with a solution. And the only solution I can see is them impeaching this guy and getting him out of the White House before the White House is no longer even there. In which I can't 100% agree with the White House because of certain things, but at the same time, he's going to tear that building completely down, and it's going to look like a Russian mansion. You ever seen on television how it looks over in Russia, the buildings with the big globe looking and all the different colors? That's what the White House is going to look like if this guy is allowed to continue in the direction that he's going in. But that's that self-centeredness. That's this king mentality that this guy has and literally has been able to get away with up to this point. But now he's pleading with the Senate. We have to reopen the government. We have to, because if we don't reopen it, we won't be able to pass any legislature. Yeah. But you should have thought about people's lives. He cares more about passing laws that more than likely will benefit, once again, him and not the people. That's his biggest concern, y'all. Let's think about this situation. He's more concerned about legislature than concerned about these people that are not making a paycheck. He cares more about legislature than caring about the people that may not be able to put food on their table next week or next month. That's what he cares more about. You would think it would be the complete opposite. I could care less about passing a law right now. I need to get these people paid, and I need to make sure these people stay fed. But no, it's about passing laws, y'all. Laws in which he puts into place in order to protect himself from anything else that goes on around him. How do you think he continually fights against rulings that have been made by federal judges? Because he has put some crazy law into place. Come on, y'all. We have to see through this foolishness. Don't let this guy continue to fool you. And he knows at this point that the walls that he has built are falling and crumbling down, just like that part of the White House that they took a crane and tore down. His walls are going to fall down just like he's destroying that building that he stays in. But y'all, I had to come on here and say something about that, because he's only doing this for his benefit. So once again, do not be fooled and jump back on that bandwagon of his. Continue in the direction that you're going in. Continue to fight against this stupidity that majority of these people in this country put into place. Black and white and Hispanic. All people voted for this guy. So it's not just a white thing. It's a white, black, and Hispanic thing. They all put him into that position. And now they're all suffering because of their decisions. But before I go, y'all, I want to talk about something else, another subject. And this is pertaining to UPS. In which, if you've been keeping up with the news, then you know what just happened. I can't remember what state they were in, but one of the UPS planes, the engine fell out of it, and the airplane crashed into a petroleum facility and I think a recycling facility. And last I saw that there were 11 lives that had been lost. And it's a terrible, terrible thing, y'all, that has occurred. And all we can do is pray that there are some survivors that make it out of there, and that some of these these people's families can get over this devastation. But I wanted to talk about it because of the fact that UPS has recently, I should say, fired or released a lot of people. A lot of people lost their jobs with UPS because of downsizing, because of closing of different facilities or different offices that they run. And they had done this, I can't remember when it was it last year or a couple of years ago? So many thousands of people lost their jobs because of downsizing. And it just came out of nowhere with no warning. And they just did it again last month or a couple of months ago. And so you have a lot of people that are going to be losing their jobs with UPS or have lost their jobs, and now they're having to go and get unemployment and having to figure out where they're going to work at. And who knows, I can't say for sure, but a lot of these people may have been working for this company for years. And this was their main income, and they thought that they would be there in order to retire. But we see that these companies can make decisions at the drop of a dime, and a lot of times they do not have the workers' best interest in mind and or at heart. And I say this because, they may have gotten some type of compensation or whatever they call it whenever you lose a job and they pay you for a month, or they may pay you for 2 or 3 months or whatever have you. They may have gotten something like that in order to help them stay above water until they find another job. But at the same time, when people get these types of plans and deals, more than likely it's not the full salary or the full amount of money that they were making when they worked for the company. It's more than likely a percentage of what they made, which means that it's going to make it more difficult for them to pay their bills and do everything they need to do, because they're not making the full amount of money that they once made. But aside from that, what's going to happen to UPS when all of this is said and done pertaining to this plane crash that just happened? Because once again, there were at least 11 lives lost. There was businesses that were destroyed, completely destroyed, because of the negligence of UPS. Because there's no way on earth that the engine of an airplane should completely fall out. And so that's going to be considered negligence. And that's going to be a suable offense. And the people's families whose lives was lost, they're going to sue UPS. These companies may actually sue UPS. And like I said, at that time it was 11 lives. God only knows until everything is cleared out how many other lives that are going to be lost, or that have been lost, I should say, in that accident. And so UPS is looking at a lawsuit that's probably so big that it could possibly put them into bankruptcy. That's how big of a lawsuit that UPS has coming their way. And once again, you cannot put a value on anyone's life. A life is so valuable that it's worth trillions and zillions of dollars. So you can't put a value on a lost life. You just can't. And so UPS is getting a taste of their own medicine. They fired a lot of people. A lot of people have lost their livelihoods because of the decisions of UPS. And now UPS is facing a dilemma so big that these big corporate managers and CEOs could find themselves in the unemployment line. They could find themselves having to look for another job. And I'm not applauding any of it, because it's all bad. It's bad that people lost their jobs. It's even worse that people lost their lives. The people flying the planes, the people on the ground. It's terrible. But this is what happens, y'all. This is what happens. We have to sometimes look at it from a perspective like this. When it came down to the civil rights movement, it took people being beat. It took people being incarcerated. It took people losing their lives in order for people like myself to have the freedom and the rights that I have today. It took Jesus being beaten being embarrassed, spit upon, having to suffer on a cross in order for us to have the forgiveness that we have the rights to and have the opportunity to be able to get into heaven and to have had the rules that God had once put into place in order for people to actually be righteous, the sacrifices and things like that. God, a lot of things changed when Jesus came to this earth, y'all. Because God literally had people struck down in the place that they stood. God had saints that would take the lives of other people if you did not abide by what God said to do. But when Jesus came, all of that changed. So I say this because there were lives lost in that UPS issue. But there's going to be some type of reckoning that comes out of that situation, y'all. Yeah, it's not the same as Jesus. It's not the same as the civil rights movement. But I use those situations as examples because sadly, we have to go through struggle. We have to go through pain. We have to bleed. Some people have to actually die in order for things to change in society. But my condolences to all the people's families that lost someone in that plane crash. And I pray that they had themselves right and that they all are able to obtain heaven in the next life, y'all. But y'all take it easy out there, and I'll talk to you as soon as something else comes about.